everyone. Welcome to another edition of Harlem Stage Live. As many organizations have shuttered their doors due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we too have had to shutter our doors, unfortunately, but we're excited that we've been able to move our programming to a digital platform and be in communication with our wonderful family of artists, and also to stay in communication with our loyal audience. So today, we have a program as part of our Dive Deeper series that was to take place on June 20th. We have rescheduled that to a date TBD, but today we want to be in conversation with the artists to learn more about their project. And the artists include Joseph Webb, who is an internationally award-winning composer, tap dancer, actor, rapper, hip-hop MC. The list goes on of all of the talents that he brings to the creative space. Composer and flautist Barédu is also a artistic force and collaborator on this project. And we also have Joanne Robinson Hill, who has been brought on as a mentor for the project, which is entitled Messages from Umi. So thank you all for joining us and welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here, Monique.
So my first question as we dive into the conversation to talk about the development of your work is, how are you doing and what's been your anchor in keeping you relatively sane and calm during these 15 weeks? I believe we're at week 15 of this COVID-19 pandemic, and also just being quarantined.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So for me, I just got finished, even though I graduated from grad school last week, virtual graduation. Yesterday, I just had my defense. So because of COVID, things were happened a little bit out of place. So I did my defense after I graduated. And so since I passed that, I am feeling so much lighter. Yeah, very much lighter and happier and grateful. So regarding COVID, it was definitely emotionally challenging for me as I was finishing up my thesis. But one of the blessings of that has been I've been able to spend time with my mother. And so instead of being in New York, I've been in Maryland, which is where I grew up and where my mother is, since March 15th. And it's just really been good for me, chicken soup for your soul type thing. It's definitely been good for me to just be with her and just to kind of have that moral support during this time. But I also wanted to speak to what's happening what else is happening in the world, the other virus and the other pandemic. And, I'll just say that, it's ironic how in the middle of catastrophe, we can also witness multiple silver linings. And the silver lining of COVID, or one of the many silver linings of COVID, is that we have time. We have time to protest. We have time to make phone calls. We have time to research. We have time to get out in the streets and mobilize and strategize. So that's something that I've been witnessing, and I'm just so proud and so grateful for all of what is happening, even though at the expense of Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery and George Floyd and the other ones that we don't even know about. But there's this uprising that's kind of reminds me of Bob Marley's album Uprising. The whole album is very befitting of where we are right now. Yeah, so those are some of the thoughts of what I have mulling over in my mind and where I've been.
I've also been listening to Bob Marley's song War. Those lyrics,
Mm.
very powerful, very powerful. And it sounds like you have been able to access space. And that's one of the things that's been a challenge being here in New York City. You know, I'm thankful that my apartment isn't tiny and I have some space, but being able to access outdoor space and to breathe, you know, the air where there's trees around you and flowers around you and all the things that oxygenate the world. So kudos to you. And I've been too looking for nature. And thank you for lifting up the concurrent viruses that we are navigating, the virus of the COVID-19 and the virus of bigotry and racism. Both are plaguing our country. So Barédu, where are you, and what's been your mooring and keeping you anchored and moving through all of these circumstances?
Yeah, well, initially it was a little tricky for me, and I know we've touched base about it before here and there. It felt like for a while I was mourning the loss of my creative juices and energy, you know, being so hyper focused on the news, and things are coming from so many different directions and people were dying. And over time, I think just sitting down at my keyboard or just sitting down, opening a book, trying to get into things that I know would inspire me in the past has been really helpful. And that's like half the battle, being able to step forward, you know? But interestingly enough, the death of George Floyd, I believe was grounding for me. It like kind of kicked me out of like this space that I've been floating in, and like, this is real, this is happening, this is another, like Joseph said really well, it's another virus that we've got to figure out what to do. And I had time and time to share information, research information, how to mobilize, how to strategize, all of those things. And so I feel a lot more connected and revived, even more purposeful lately. So
That's a great term, the purposeful. I think to your point, it's excellent. It gave us a focus, because we do have we're kind of in limbo, because we don't know when the economies are going to open up, when the salons, so you can get a pedicure for those of us that need one or would like one. So there's a lot of uncertainty. We don't know as an institution, when will Harlem Stage be able to open its doors and welcome our artists back and welcome our audiences back. So there is a lot of uncertainty, and I think you're right to that point. The murder of George Floyd gave us a unified direction, or whatever way you land on that conversation. And Joanne, how have you been moving through this? I want to also just say that it's such an honor to have you, and with your experience in the field, former director of the education for the Joyce Theater, and your long time impact on the field of dance, and also your work in the field of jazz. So you are, it was important for me coming into this position to provide the artists that we are commissioning to create new work. I could see after my first season that a lot of artists needed a bit more support than the institution could give. So there's the financial support to move your project forward, advance it. And then there is the intangible support in mentorship. And that comes in a lot of forms. It could be a director, or it could be a mentor around your choreography, the music. There's so much in your piece, and every piece has its own, identity, its own kind of personality. So thank you, Joanne. How have you been doing? And yeah, we'll start with there. How are you?
Well, I've been doing very well, actually. But you know, like Joseph and Barédu, the recent murder, if you will, of George Floyd, and then more recently, the murder of Rashad Brooks, I think I don't know, it has impacted the way I feel in a really big way. It was like a throwback to the 1960s, where, you know, when there were major uprisings. We were in in that similar space. It's like the fire next time, all over again. And I guess I'm heartened that so many voices, you know, are speaking out all over the world, really. And perhaps we should be optimistic that a different kind, I'd like to be optimistic. I'm cautiously optimistic that a different kind of change can take place. I'm also extremely grateful to be working with you guys. We were hoping that we would have been in the studio, but that, you know, has not happened. But we've had great conversations, I think, along the way.
Yes.
Getting a sense of the direction that you'd like to take the work in. And I suspect that it will change even now because of recent events. We can't avoid being impacted by recent events. So I'm really interested in learning what your thinking is about messages from Umi now.
That's a great segue. Joseph, I too would like to hear from you. And Barédu, has this 14, 15 weeks, including the recent murders of unarmed citizens, influenced, shifted your thinking about the piece? And before you answer that, just think about that. I'd like, Joanne, if you could talk a little bit about mentorship and your experience with mentorship and why you advocate for this, or why you committed to this project.
It's true. I did advocate for this. However, I have to say that I don't think of myself as being a mentor as much as being an outside eye. By that I mean, I never see myself as someone who would direct. I'm not a director, but I think can act as a kind of sounding board, and act as someone who can simply say, this is what I'm seeing. You know, is this what you meant for it to be? So that Joseph and Barédu can maybe reflect upon some things that they're working on or that they've put out there that may or may not be what they actually want in the piece. One of the things that I asked Joseph about early on in our conversations, because he said, I'm making an evening length work. And I said, one of the questions I always ask, because so many artists say that, is why? Why are you making an evening length work? And I hope that that's something that they're both reflecting on. The work, I think, will tell you how long it wants to be. And it's hard to be challenged when you set yourself a goal that, oh, this is going to be, you know, an hour-long piece or an evening length piece, whatever that means. But the work will speak to you and let you know what it needs to be as you go back into the studio and revisit the material.
So Joseph and Barédu, before you, in addition to talking about if there has been any shift based on the recent events, tell us what is Messages from Umi.
Oh, okay, yes. So Messages from Umi is a multidisciplinary piece of artwork that incorporates text in the form of emceeing, live music composition composed by Barédu, and we have, and I'm speaking of the first iteration that we did at Harlem Stage with a 5-piece band, and we also had 2 other wonderful dancers, Martell and Kim Floyd. And those other dancers also bring different styles of dance to the picture. So Messages from Umi tells the story of the Order of LA. And LA is short for long arms. long arms, or the Order of LA long arms, we received messages from Mother Umi. Mother Umi is hip hop. All right. So we received these messages from Mother Umi, and we express and interpret these messages that we receive, these downloads, via these different mediums with our audience. So regarding over the last 14 to 15 weeks, so what I was hoping to do on June 20th, I was hoping to present another iteration of messages from Umi, but I wanted this piece to be more engaging and more participatory with the audience. So drawing on museum theater, and also drawing on some other applied theater principles, I was hoping to set up the space as the different scenes that we had in our first performance last year were actually going to be, in addition to newer ones, were actually going to be exhibits. Also drew some inspiration from George C. Wolfe's Colored Museum as well. They were going to be exhibits that actually shot off of the wall and interacted with the audience, whether that was dancing, whether that was live instrumentation, whether that was text. And definitely have written down some ideas that I've definitely been inspired by what a lot of our young people are doing and saying during this time. And also when I create something, so for instance, I did a film, or co-created a film called Hell You Talk About, all right? And basically it's a dance ritual, it's a dance protest in response to what happened to Philando Castile and some of the others that during 2015 and 2016, a little bit towards the beginning stages of what we might know as the Black Lives Matter movement. I'm interested in addressing, number one, what it is, calling a thing. And then I'm also interested in where that thing can go. What are the possibilities? What can come out of this particular situation that might be challenging issues? But how can we come out of this? And what are some options of how we can evolve, grow, and in the case of that film, heal? So those are some ideas that I was thinking about. Those are some themes that allowed me to think about some new exhibits that can happen within messages from Umi that have been inspired by this second virus in America that has been lingering for a while, for a very long time, since its inception.
Mm-hmm. When we presented the piece, you are one of our Fund for New Work artists, so I don't know if we mentioned that. And in addition to you performing the first iteration of Messages from Umi during our eMoves festival, dance festival in 2019, you've been commissioned to go deeper in the work and develop the work. And the work was presented as you've mentioned, of course, it had tap dance because you're an extraordinary tap dancer. It had Kim D. Holmes with hip hop dance and all of the dance that that's in her vocabulary, and you had a band. And so now what I hear you say is you're looking to structure the world would be a museum or gallery, and then ideas come to life. Characters come to life. So how do you approach the composition and creating the music for these it could be seemingly disparate. It's also aligned. You know, Joseph and all of his genius. How do you get into the world, Barédu?
It is collaborative with Joseph. So I'll usually ask him, what are you feeling about, let's say, particular scenes. So if we talk about the first iteration, we knew that we had about 4 scenes, if I remember correctly. And I would say, okay, in each scene, give me like a general description of what you're thinking and how you're feeling. And he would communicate that to me, and then I would internalize that. And I would just come up with a bunch of different sounds. You know, I would make the beats using a machine and Ableton, and then I would play them back to him. And then he would just give me a thumbs up, or can we do this? Can we extend this section? And so it was actually very collaborative. Or I might have just already had something in my arsenal that was just like hanging around. And he would say, I like that, actually, let's use that. But I like that it was really collaborative.
It's good to have an arsenal. That says a lot about your musicianship and creativity. It sounds like you're always creating, so you may have something in your back pocket that's ready to go.
Yeah.
So we're talking about a project that had for lack of a better term, a work in progress presentation as part of eMoves Festival in 2019. And you've been working, you've had conversations with Joanne and the developmental process. So I'd like you to talk a little bit more about the challenges of developing new work, because there are challenges, and also any advice that you could give to artists that are thinking about or have work and they just don't know, how do I take it from C to D? They may have already taken it from A to B, but how do I get to F?
Yeah. I think when I think about the heyday of the Blue Note Records era, and I take a look at some of the brilliant jazz musicians, when I take a look at, and a lot of them have transitioned. And so who am I thinking of? I'm thinking of, you know, folks like Lee Morgan, for example. You know, Lee Morgan had like a plethora of CDs or albums. But one of the things that I've noticed is that they kept on recording, they kept on creating, no matter what the circumstances were. And that's what the jazz musicians did. You know what I mean? It's because of their love of what they were doing and the music that they were making, and the connection that had to their culture and their heritage. Yeah. So I would encourage the first part of that question, or the second part. I'll come back to the first part. I would encourage people artists to surround yourself with like-minded folk. That could be 2 or 3 people, or it could be a whole community of folks. You know, surround yourself with like-minded folks, and go out and create what you want to create. I know from experience, I used to be this type of artist. Everything always had to be right. And I'm a Virgo, so in a sense, I'm still there. But I also realized that there's been quite a few projects that when I look in my notebook, that I would have loved to have shared with the world, but I didn't, because I didn't have funds or I didn't have resources, which brings me to the first part of that question. As an artist, the main thing that I see that I need is, I'm not short of ideas. I'm not short of creating something, which I'm grateful for. I literally have like ideas that are constantly being downloaded to me periodically throughout the day. Sometimes I have to shut it off. But it's been the monetary thing, because I've gotten to the point now, whereas, you know, I have a lot of ideas, but I want to be able to present something in a way that actually serves the idea.
Some of the feedback that I received when I took this position, and one of the reasons I came to Harlem Stage, is because it has a long decades history, 30 years plus years of incubating, supporting, commissioning, and advancing the ideas of artists of color.
Yes.
We know that it is not, it's a difficult, long journey, similar to, I think about the chicken pecking out of the egg. It's messy, it's not pretty, but you need to get out. And so if you could just share, because, and I'm asking the question to help other artists as well, because y'all are in it. You have wonderful Joanne, who had to leave. Thank you, Joanne, for joining us.
Thank you, Joanne. Thank you.
Yes.
Yes.
So you have the outside eye and the support of Joanne. You have the institution. But what I would like to get at is there's no pretty bow on the developmental process. And of course, every project has its own personality. So you were talking about some of the challenges and also some of the rewards of discovery. So if you could just share with us any nuggets, especially for artists, of what you have discovered along this journey.
Okay. Well, before I do that, I just want to speak a little bit to how valuable Harlem Stage is to artists, Black artists and artists of color. And I think the best way that I can say that is during this time of protest and resistance that's happening. Actually, it's happening across the world. That's the deep part about it. It's happening across the world. We see organizations that are scrambling to come up with sincere, genuine statements of meaning in regards to their organization and how they support and may not support what is happening. And I think Harlem Stage is a prime example of doing that work of supporting Black and artists of color on a consistent basis. I think Harlem Stage is a prime example of what organizations can look, how organizations can look and be when they're working with Black artists and artists of color, which actually starts within the organization. So I just kind of wanted to kind of speak to that a little bit. So part of what Joanne said earlier, she was talking about how you have to, once you get this idea, you have to listen to the idea, almost as if the idea is an entity in and of itself. It's an extension of you, but you have to listen to the idea. And so, and doing that, I've gone through many different processes and how I wanted to move forward with the project. I remember afterwards I was kind of feeling that I definitely wanted to do a full length work, and I'm still toying with that. Full length meaning like an hour and a half show. And then I wanted to extend the show in the format in which we had done it in May. And then I just started to sit back a little bit and just say, all right, where's this coming from? Is this coming from because I just want to produce a full length work, or I just want to produce something, or are you listening to this idea that you were birthed with, and what is the idea saying? And so drawing from some of the things that I've learned over the years in my program, my master's program, and just other things that I've been inspired by kind of led me to the idea that I shared earlier. So it's definitely, I'm sure we've all seen that post where it's just like, I think they say here to success, we think it's here, but it's like this whole, all these lines, that kind of take place. And then the idea, and then something else I've been meditating on is the ideas of success and failure. And if you commit to the idea, and if you're honest with the idea, and you put the work in, you're not so inundated with with success or failure as much as you are as committing to the project and committing to seeing the idea done. And in that way, success or failure doesn't own the project.
That's a fascinating statement. Success or failure doesn't own the project.
Own the project. Yeah. Yeah. Because that's what we do as artists, no matter what our mediums is. That's what we do. We you know, we say, I want this to be successful, and we all have our own definitions of what that is. That's subjective, right? But I want this to be successful, or, you know, I want a packed house, and all of those things are wonderful things, but your disposition of the project should not be dependent upon, you know, how many people how many people are talking about your work, or how many people showed up, or how many write-ups that you have, or all these other things that we equate success with. As to, did you commit to the project, and did you do the project in the way in which you were led and called to do it?
You know, you brought up a good point, a very important point about failure and success and failure. Part of developing new work is failing. If you, and failing is not even the right term. It's, the artist is able to get a project from here to here.
Yeah.
And then you discover, you know what, that idea that I had, or that aspect of the idea, doesn't serve the project any longer, because in the developmental process, I learned this.
Yes.
Or I discovered this. And a lot of artists of color don't receive the resources, the space, the financial resources, the mentorship, the team building to have that, you know, messy, wonderful, wacky journey of discovery. And you may find at the end of, or at the middle of the process, that you're going in a different direction, thus the museum and gallery. And that's what's wonderful. And what we're committed to here at Harlem Stage is, yes, supporting artists to develop new work. We also want the artists to complete work. So as you advance the work, you may find that, you know what, within this developmental process, I discovered this, that now is going to be part of a new work, or now the work is taken a completely different direction. We love that. And we also want to seed the field with exciting, innovative voices. And so that the work is completed and is ready to tour, and that Harlem Stage is known for, which we are, known for advancing the voices and amplifying the voices of artists of color. So we've done that with our Waterworks program, which is a much larger commissioning program. And this Fund for New Work commissioning program, we want it to be a feeder to the Waterworks program. And you're getting a little exclusive information here, because we've just gone through a strategic planning process last fall. And so this is part of it. So you heard it here first. We're looking to amplify our, you know, emerging artists. This is kind of emerging artists. And you were one of those artists that one of the funders says, well, how do you consider Joseph Webb as an emerging artist? He's a Tony Award winning, you know, one of the original members of Bringing the Noise, Bringing the Funk. That's not emerging. And I said, he has no work that's completed that's ready to tour. So he's still emerging as a creator. And I've seen your work at Harlem School of the Arts. Thanks. So I've seen it, and also downtown at the
Settlement.
The Henry Street Settlement, not Henry Street Settlement, the Settlement House.
But it was
a Dancing Buddhas.
Yes. That was the first. That was the Three Jewels.
The Three Jewels,
The Three Jewels, Dancing Buddhas, the Three Jewels. That was our first performance as a company, Dancing Buddhas Company, and I think that might have been the first. That might have been the first time that Barédu and I collaborated on the composition, because she did the composition for that as well.
And that was my first time meeting you, Barédu. So as a presenter and a curator, I'm committed to you know, going all the way down to the Lower East Side or uptown in Harlem, wherever the artists, and then providing opportunities. So I'm just thankful that you two are along for the ride and that you're part of the Harlem Stage family. So now we get to see a snippet of where Messages from Umi is now. This is a piece from the May 2019 presentation that you did here at Harlem Stage. So I'll let you just tell us, introduce it, and we're going to take a look at it, and then we're going to have a live chat and allow our audience to come in and ask questions. I'm sure they have tons of questions for both of you. So tell us a little bit about what we're going to see.
Okay, you're going to see a clip from Messages from Umi, just like Monique said, that took place last year. I just want you to experience it. I want you to experience it. I don't want to put a pin on anything. I just want you to experience it, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about it after this.
So I'll ask you one last question, and that is, why do you think, and you've answered this pretty much, Joseph, so I'll ask Barédu to give us her first response, be the first responder to this. Why do you think Harlem Stage is important to artists of color and the broader arts cultural sector?
That's deep, Monique. Well, well, when you're presenting new work, or when you have an idea in your mind and you're committing it to it and you're presenting it, shopping it around, it's already a lot to get an organization or an institution to take a chance on that work, regardless of your color. Some organizations might not be ready to commit to a new work. They might want to see the whole thing complete, developed. They might want to know that you have a following. They might want to know that you can attract audiences. But Harlem Stage, well, let me take it back. As an artist of color trying to do that, that's like an extra step that you have to take, depending on the institution and the mission of that institution. But Harlem Stage, believing in artists of color, believing in that seed is really, really special. It's unique, it's not common at all. And that it takes place in Harlem, which is such a sacred space. Absolutely, it's a way to honor our ancestors, the people that have come before us, and their contributions, and in a way we're just sort of feeding each other. And so it's yeah, and space is a vital resource, let's not front, so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I think Barédu did a wonderful job in explaining that, just to kind of piggyback off of that, being able to go on stage and perform and then come off the stage and step out into the street and to be in Harlem and to see your people is something that performing artists don't always get a chance to experience. When we perform at different places and we step out into the street of the theater, we're in someone else's neighborhood, So to be able to do work, I was a Harlem Night for 9+ years, and still consider Harlem a wonderful place to hold in my heart. It definitely keeps me warm. So that, coupled with what I said earlier regarding the example that Harlem Stage is to the performing arts world, is very important as a vital force, but also as an example of how to sincerely and genuinely work with Black and artists of color.
Thank you. You two are an inspiration for us to continue to do the work that we do. During this time, we know it's not easy. Funding is, there's a lot of challenges around funding, obviously, and we're committed to our audience and our artists to move forward and move the needle on these important conversations. And that's what the artists that are in the Harlem Stage family are known for is reflecting the times and moving the needle on important conversations and not being afraid to lean in and also to have fun and to have a great time. So you're going to have a good time at Harlem Stage. So now we're going to look at the clip, and then we're going to come back and have a chat so that we can bring people in to ask questions and to give us their feedback on messages from Umi. So thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Rainwater collected on the roof. Ancestors align me with the truth. The way we shift time is the proof. Wordsmith, I conjure magic in the booth. Rainwater collected on the roof. Ancestors align me with the truth. The way we shift time is the proof. Wordsmith, I conjure magic in the booth. Rebirth the nation with a noose. Move team like pineapple juice. The eagle slows progress like a toll room. I get shut down, I feel like busting loose. Play for the moment, dreams for omens. We Romans, so we play like the Romans. Kimonos and Shinjuku, lead more than room. Action sonic duo, we appear with two. So what? Brady was a freeloader. We blue and green. A lot of validation, we show us what I see. I mean what I say, and I say what I mean. Water from my sister and the best vaccine. Hip-hop before hip-hop, blues before jazz. Ladies before Americans, the truth in my stash. Hip-hop before hip-hop, blues before jazz. Ladies before Americans, the truth in my stash. Hip-hop before hip-hop, blues before jazz. Ladies before Americans, the truth in my stash. Hip-hop before hip-hop, blues before jazz. Ladies before Americans, the truth in my stash. Why niggas always drinks and chapter so fast? Sipping coconut water, we just roll fast. We roll, we roll, we roll, we roll, we roll, we just roll fast. Rainwater collected on the roof. Ancestors allow me with the truth. The way we shift time is the proof. I'm a wordsmith. I conjure magic in the booth. Rainwater collected on the. Rainwater collected on the. Rainwater collected on the. Ancestors allow me with it. Ancestors allow me with it. Ancestors allow me with it. Rainwater collected on the. Rebirth the nation with noose. Move things like pineapple juice. The eagle slows progress like a toll booth. I beat your ground, I bust a loose. Hey,